People ask me, when are y'all gonna move to a bigger house, and aren't you feeling cramped? And I feel like our house is still a pretty good fit and pretty good size for the 5 of us. I just love our house. I mean, this is where so many of our firsts have happened. This is our first house to buy. This is where all of our kids have been born, and we're raising them. But hey, one day we are going to move. But for now, I love it. I love having a tiny house.
Hey guys, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It is July 7th, Wednesday, and I was actually doing some thinking today, and I was thinking about that $850,000 a year on average the Duggars were making to be on Counting On, and the kids weren't paid. Yes, that's right. I'm not lying. Jim Bob Duggar was essentially getting all of the cash, getting paid to his company called Mad Family, and he was supposed to distribute money, but yet, according to The Sun and people I've talked to, the kids were not getting a percentage that they were promised, and instead Jim Bob would often flip them properties or give them perks to stay, but they definitely were not always consistently paid. With that in mind, I was thinking about Jessa. Everyone gives her so much crap, you guys, and listen, I am not one to say that having 4 kids in a 2-bedroom home is the wisest decision. But I always have to remember that 1, Jessa grew up in a cult. 2, Jessa has been conditioned that she only is supposed to have as many kids as God gives her, that children are a blessing, and that if she doesn't obey God, she's like being against God, which gets her under the outside of the umbrella of authority, making her susceptible to Satan, you know, all that IBLP stuff. She has been one of the biggest defenders of her family, and she also has been the mainstay on Counting On. Jessa Duggar was the first of the 2 daughters, and their show was called Jill and Jessa Counting On, and it was supposed to follow the 2 girls and some of the older kids as they entered into the world of being married and having kids and sort of following their path, because TLC dropped Josh and they got rid of Jim Bob and Michelle and said, well, you know, it's just going to be about the kids and their journey. We're going to respect the girls and everything they were put through, right? Well, Jill has now said she was filming basically against her will and threatened to film even though she didn't want to. Well, basically, and that's what Derek has said on Instagram. Jessa, for her part, has never left the show. She was on it from the very first season until the very last episode. She was the most heavily featured in the last episode that ever aired on TLC, which was that weird Easter special. And she, because of that, was always a main draw for the channel and for the show. Jessa has the largest social media following. I'm not kidding. She surpasses her sisters by quite a bit. Jessa has 2.2 million followers on her Instagram. The next sister that's closest to her is Jill, and Jill has 1.7 million, and then the next closest to that is Ginger, who has 1.4 million. So Jessa, who has by far been the favorite, the most popular, many always say the most beautiful. I think it's a toss-up. All these girls are gorgeous. You don't have to like the Duggars, but my gosh, do they make good-looking girls. The boys don't really do it for me, but the girls are so pretty. So Jessa is stunning, and she has been on the show, and she's been very even and pragmatic, and she's following kind of the Duggar formula. So people assumed that she would be, as someone on a reality show for her whole life, well compensated. But it sounds like she wasn't, because they weren't paying her. Jill basically had to sue her parents, sort of, had to hire an attorney to fight for her dad to pay her for her time on air. And Jessa, she was given a house, mind you, for her wedding, the house that her abuser, Josh, lived in before her. And it has 2 bedrooms and 1 bath, and she's about to have 4 kids. She only has 2 kids per bedroom, or she has 4 kids and they only have 2 bedrooms. So technically that's not illegal, but people are pretty upset because they feel like Jessa is being irresponsible because she has this tiny house and she's gonna have 4 kids in 1 bedroom. And people say that, you know, she needs to get a bigger house. She's already outgrown that house, and comments about the house are littering her Instagram. She's been sharing different things on her Instagram. She's been talking about and promoting like these pillows and trying to make a buck off all of these things that she's doing. One person said on her Instagram, "How are you going to fit your children in your 2-bedroom house?" One person said, "How are you going to fit all of your children in a 2-bedroom house? It was only small when we last saw it." Another person said, "How are you to manage such a tiny house with a family your size? Are you guys going to get a bigger house with now having 4 kids? Are you adding on to her house?" So people are clearly worried about the size of her house, right? So I could not find specifically any guidelines for how many kids should be in a house and whether or not a child has to have their own home. Technically, a child does not need to have their own bedroom. Child advocates and lawyers will generally say this, that if your child is sharing a room with someone, you'll want to stick with around and read the rules so you don't end up in trouble with CPS. So it says that a bedroom should not have more than 2 children in it. 2 people per bedroom is generally considered an occupancy limit for rental purposes. In most cases, there is a 2+1 occupancy limit that states you can have 2 people per bedroom plus 1 person in a living space. So right now they have 4 in bed, so they have 5 right now, which is kind of, they're saying their house would technically have a 5-person occupancy, and they're about to have 6. So they say that CPS generally does not approve of boys and girls sharing a bedroom after the age of 5 years old. Spurgeon is 5. If one sibling is over the age of 5, you should do whatever you can to ensure that they are not sharing the room with someone of the opposite gender. Now, technically, they're not illegal for them to share. And I was actually just checking a website about whether or not it was legal in the state of Arkansas for a number, like up to 4 kids, to live in a room together. And according to a website called Find Laws, the state of Arkansas allows up to 4 children per room. So this is actually the way in Arkansas that they can have up to 4 kids in 1 bedroom. It says that the children must also have their own beds and the space must be safe and comfortable. So they have to have at least a bed for room for 4 kids, and they also have to be able to provide a safe, like their own bed and then a safe sleeping area. So technically, she's not like breaking any housing codes by doing this. It's just more cramped. So even though we aren't looking at anything technically illegal here, the bigger issue is, why is Jessa, who has 3 kids already, 4th on the way, and a husband that works, living in such a small house? And how is it that Jessa, who basically headlined a reality show, living in such cramped quarters, even though she theoretically should have a lot more money than she does? Some people will criticize Jessa because they'll say, well, Ben just needs to get his own job. He needs to work harder and do more. Other kids that are in the situation are not living like that. They'll look at Jill and say, well, Jill and Derek own their own home and it's not anything like Jessa and Ben's. Or they'll say, look at Ginger and Jeremy, who are off in California, or Joy and Austin, who also have, a 3-bedroom home. And they'll say that, it's possible if your husband would just work, because all of their husbands work. Well, technically, Ben has a job, but he's working as a pastor, and pastors, apparently, according to the people I've talked to in that world, don't get paid a whole lot. So don't expect Ben to be like coming home raking in the dough as a pastor, and he's still working for Michelle, which begs the question of, why is Jim Bob making $850,000 a year on average, and his daughter, who is the main appeal, the largest social media presence, the most popular Duggar, living in such a tiny house? Jessa will justify it by saying that she loves her tiny house, but I have a feeling that she would just say about anything not to upset her parents. That's just my opinion. But I don't think it's fair to drag her, because honestly, she has to get there herself. She has to be able to leave herself. You can't, I think it's more like, Ben, please get to work. But also, we really should be putting criticism on Jim Bob. Like, why was his daughter on why has his daughter been on reality television for such a long time, the entirety of the series, and she can't afford a home for her kids? That's not okay. That's ridiculous, and it should go to Jim Bob, because her job for all this time was being on Counting On. That was Ben's job too, and they have nothing to show for it. And that to me should be an issue with Jim Bob and the network. And just Jessa should be getting paid, and maybe she has to go the route of her sister Jill and sue her parents. I don't know if that will happen. But do I think Jessa should have more kids in the house that is this small? No. Does that mean it'll stop her from having a 5th kid? No. Will she have more kids? Probably. And will she move? I have no clue. All right, you guys, what are your thoughts about this? Tell me in the comments below. Bye, guys.